So I also want to say thanks to everyone here, obviously. This is exciting. But my question is, I kind of wanted to get you to reiterate this, because I think you said something about it earlier, but I didn't get the full question. It was not going to be asked where the seeds came from. Like, my example that I can think of is if I happen to find feral seeds and got them tested, and it's not likely, obviously, but they happen to be below the 0.3%, would those seeds be considered legal by the state or the federal government under the research and development? And also to that question is, I know the Farm Bill permitted the schools, and then it said the state departments, like the federal government granted state departments of agriculture the right to grow it for research purposes. So does that mean farmers working through the state, or is that like the actual state, USDA specifically? And then that waste product from that research and development, can it be used in ways that you were just talking about? Like, even if it's I guess I wanted to see what I can do to make sure that we are trying to make use of all the wastes, even if we're not putting them into the market. Sorry, a little.
That's right. Veronica's helping me keep track. So the seed. So I hope I understand correctly. The seed. We don't. If we test the seed, it's not going to give us an accurate reading of what the THC is. So the seed itself, in terms of Colorado law, is legal, because marijuana is legal, industrial hemp is legal. But if you leave the state of Colorado, if that seed moves interstate or between countries, the federal government has jurisdiction, and therefore it is illegal regardless of what the THC content is. So I hope I understood that correctly. Okay. So
the next one is the state
research. The Farm Bill. Okay. The Farm Bill provision that was signed recently allows the state universities and the state regulatory agencies to do research. If you register with us as R&D, you are covered, quote unquote, covered by that Farm Bill provision. But if you register as commercial, you are not covered by that Farm Bill provision. The waste materials, we have to work with you regarding that. As long as it doesn't germinate, we don't have any issues with that. You can plow it under, you can do this, do that. If it might potentially germinate and might potentially move, as I said, this is a work in progress, and so we have a lot to learn. We may find that we didn't think about a lot of things that we should have thought about on the front end, but we just didn't know, and the folks advising us didn't know either. So, as I say, it's a work in progress, and we will see a lot of changes as we go through the future.
And just under that research and development advantage, right? If you're drawing out one research and development, you said that's not going to be used in the market, is to be masked up and used in some way.
Oh, R&D?
Yeah.
So you have a lot more leeway in R&D. As I said, we don't expect, it wasn't legal before, so we don't expect that you're ready to market something. If you're ready to market it, it should be commercially registered. So the R&D, you have a lot of leeway because it is assumed that you will be critically looking at what you're growing, what traits do you want from this, are you going to cross it with this, how are you going to, and basically we're getting after the 0.3. Maybe there's some other trait that you're interested in, but really, we're only interested in the 0.3% THC. So you have leeway so we're not going to make you destroy that. And the waste and all that, you probably have to work with, those are things we have to address. How the waste would be destroyed and dealt with. Those are things we have to work with. If you're working with an institution, you'd have to work with your institution's lawyers on how that would be. Anyway, a lot of questions, a lot of valid questions that we may not have all the answers to yet.
I would just want to say I would like to buy everyone's leaf for juicing and other products that I want to make. So, any leaf, hemp leaf, I like to buy it.
And one thing I'd like to add is I've personally seen the wild strains growing and how it can really take over. You know, hemp really likes to regenerate. So you want to be careful. You don't want to just put something into your grounds that you don't know what it's going to be. It didn't work for you, and now you're looking at contamination issues later down the line when you're going, now I've identified what hemp seed I want to grow, and oh no, wait a minute, they're popping up all over the place this spring from last year. So you definitely want to be cautious of that and really, you know, work with some people or wait for some of these groups that are working really hard to bring us those seeds.
Bless you.
So my question would be towards Laura. I'm just curious if we can, because I'm sure there's other people out there mass producing, trying to get to the growing season. If we can get some type of permission slip or something for all these plants that we're trying to keep indoors until it's planting season, and we can put down the coordinates on a piece of paper, just so that way, I mean, if we have 20,000 plants there without anything, I mean, without being able to put them in the ground and have the coordinates to fill out the application, that's why I'm wondering if we can get some type of permission slip or something for having those.
That is something we have thought about. Okay, so the way the law was written, and we didn't have any leeway here, is that the registration period ends May 1. So you will need to apply with us prior to May 1. And if you don't have a map, and if you don't have this or that, so basically this is for anyone whose application is incomplete. And again, don't hold me to this, but we're not going to just send it back and say you're denied. We're probably going to call you. Again, don't hold me to that, because if we have 5,000 applications, we cannot make 5,000 calls. But I don't anticipate that we're going to have that many. So the intent at this moment in time, again, my ignorance of what it's going to actually look like, is that we will call you and we will talk to you, and you have the ability in this program to modify. We, the Department of Ag, must know when you have any modifications, so that goes for everyone. And if you're going to change the size, the acreage, you're going to change something, we need to be notified. And so that would fit under that. We may put you into a registration pending, and so I don't know what your little piece of paper would look like. Well, what you're going to do with your application is you're going to tell us the indoor part. We need to know where that is, because it may theoretically never leave indoors. That's legitimate. So we would need to be able to inspect the indoor piece. When you move them outdoors, you're going to file an addendum, and you're going to give us the location of the outdoor. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you would have your piece of paper, you just got to tell us where it is indoors.
I apologize, I forgot your name, but one thing I haven't ever discussed today is biofuels. And I was wondering, from the Department of Agriculture standpoint, is this something that you regulate? And if you do, what regulations are in place or are potentially going to be proposed to be put in place for potential hemp biofuels?
Okay, the answer is no. We do not regulate biofuels. I'm not sure who does, or if anyone does. What we regulate, what you're talking about in this case is processing, basically. Right. We regulate, you grow the plant, and we regulate that the plant meets the 0.3% mandate that we have. And then you give us a contract with an in-state processor, which could be a biofuels thing. But regulating the processing, so whether it's biofuels, whether it's pressing for oil, whether it's making it into fiber, we do not regulate that. That's processing, and we do not have jurisdiction over processing.
Is that federal level?
No, I don't know that it's federal level, because really, when you process it, so it's going to go to a biofuel plant, so there are things we may need to talk about, but if you process this and it goes to a biofuel plant, we have to talk about what state it might leave the state. We assume that your in-state processor that's a dictate, it has to be an in-state processor. So that in this case, the biofuel place has to be in Colorado. The biofuel place cannot be outside because your unprocessed product cannot leave the state line. So your processor has to be here for the biofuel piece.
Just real quick, I want to say we are going to end the FAQs after this gentleman right here with the blue shirt, sweatshirt, I think, on.
I just want to, I hope give some insight on this as someone who's driven on straight vegetable oil in a gray area for 10 years now. I buy a lot of special federal fuel form and a special New Mexico state fuel form from New Mexico each year, and because on the advice of the fellow who did the conversion of my ridiculously oversized American truck, he said government agencies like when you send them money, and so I fill these, check out in the federal, it's form 720, and I check it out, it's called other fuels, and it's a certain amount you're supposed to pay, and it's fair because I'm using the public roads. There's the issue of emissions and whatnot, and that's a very formalized thing. It's going to take good lobbying on the federal level to make it happen. A couple of quick points specifically about hemp as a fuel. In Hemp House, I took a ride. Bill Althouse in Denver, many of you will know him, he's Amster, a great guy, and watching on our stream and texting me that he can't hear the audio. Bill, I hope you can hear the audio now. He gave me a hemp-powered limo ride. From his old Mercedes, right? It can be done, but the guy who did the rendering of the oil said that the fact that hemp is such a great superfood gives it some problems in the realm of biodiesel because the actual lignin chains or omega chains, whatever he's talking about, it's harder to process in its current form, and it's also a potential food. So the better app might be alcohol/ethanol production from stocks if we're going to be driving. Or develop new strains, develop new cultivars that are better.
Veronica, did you say we need to?
No, we're gonna,
Oh,
he's gonna be our last one.
great, okay, great.
I'd just like to thank everybody on the panel that's been here for their time. Most importantly, I do a lot of research, been doing research on this for over 10 years, and the last 4 extensively in FDA-approved clean room, lighting spectrum, repeatability, accuracy, transparency, blah, 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 blah. R&D, can I have, for as long as I sit, my question would be, if I have multiple sites, meaning say I want one in the Front Range, I want one in Shelby County, and I want one out on there, as long as I kept it under an acre, do I have to, can I do the whole application under the nonprofit that way, or do I have to have it separate? How would I go about that? And then the second question would be, since the farmers want something to do in the winter, when we move it inside, what's the stipulation on that? Because you had said something about commercial and, can you elaborate?
Yeah.
Okay, so if your research and development is done all under one company name, I think it is feasible that you could have many different sites in many different locations. So in our application form, we've kind of thought about that. And again, we may not thought about everything, but we thought about that. So we have places where you can put in each place. And there may be some instances where we have to maybe call you and ask more questions. And it is conceivable that you might have to fill out more than one application. But the 10 acres we have to stay with. So if you're one company, you're bound by the 10 acres. If you have multiple companies, then each company would be 10 acres apiece, basically. Okay. Moving it indoors. So I believe this was a mistake. But the law, so this is something that we don't have, it's not as easy to change. But the law said that research and development could not occur indoors, which it's being worked on to change that. But the issue is that it has not been changed yet. And so if it's